Great. Now my favorite section. We are to the Profiles in Success section of our show, and this week we are focusing on Milton Friedman. He is a Nobel Prize winning economist. He's from the University of Chicago School of Economic Thinking. They consider themselves neoclassical, but what does that mean? Well, the classical model of economics is based on the idea of John Maynard Keynes, and that is pretty much throw money at problems until the problem goes away. And this has been considered the classical model of economics, at least up until the 60s. And then in the 60s, Chicago School of Economics started publishing papers that were very different. And Milton Friedman actually won the Nobel Prize in 1976 for his theories on monetary history and the complexities of stabilization policy and consumption analysis. And he's most well known for criticizing big government. He many of the most conservative economic policies that are circulating in American politics today come from his work. Mostly the fact that taxes are horrible for economies. You can't tax your way into prosperity. In fact, he was noted for saying that. You want to give people, and you can't control an economy into success. You have to understand that individual people know what to do for themselves better than you can ever know what to do for them. You have to let them choose. And the idea that you can centrally plan in a society is truly based on the premise that you look down on the people who you claim to be leading because you don't think that they can lead themselves. But the truth is that they can. And when you leave businesses alone, and when you leave individuals alone to make whatever decision is best for them, you're going to have a successful person, a much more efficient person. He called Keynesian theory naive, and he's really a champion of non-leftist, non-liberal political believers. So we're thinking of the Republicans in the United States, we're thinking of the Tories, and even more the Brexit party in England. And he was well known for advising people like Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. And the Estonian economic model, which at least up until recently has been very successful, was largely based on the works of Milton Friedman. It's one of the few economies of the world that can say that they've tried to follow his teachings precisely. And they've had a lot of economic success as a result. From what I understand, some of their political leanings have changed recently, especially because European Union has clawed back some of the autonomy that individual member states formerly enjoyed. But you can also see it in Chile. Chile was in terrible economic conditions, and now they're one of the most prosperous countries in South America. And Estonia, if they weren't part of European Union, would probably be much more successful if they followed the principles of Milton Friedman. But the most important principle I want to talk about today is based on the fact that I was reading an article that was talking about the ways that our mentality and our perceptions and our practices are going to change as a result of coronavirus. They talked about, drones being much more used. We talked last week about robotics, or a couple weeks ago about robotics being much more used in the future. And, there's other trends like solar energy is, in battery power, like we've talked about over and over again. Role of government, though. That's the big question, because in any time of a crisis, the government loves to take power. We need more power for the government to help us get through these times. Let's give our rights away to the government to protect us. We need someone to take care of our lives for us because they're so much more educated, or they're so much more noble, or they're so much more elite. So we should look to them to guide us, to make decisions for us, for our own benefit. Now, I'm somebody who's very skeptical of this, and Milton Friedman was too, and most, I think, libertarian-minded thinkers are skeptical of a government who claims to be able to do anything for you other than police and municipalities and military. So it really comes protecting me from people who want to hurt me. Other than that, leave me alone. But one big theme that has come up in American politics, especially in this election cycle, is this concept of universal basic income. The candidate Andrew Yang, who was, I guess you would call him an alumnus of Silicon Valley, so he made his fortune doing business in the United States, and he's really very much considered a Silicon Valley insider. He was almost like a Silicon Valley presidential candidate. But he caucused with the Democrats, and he had a lot of really unique ideas from any of the other candidates on the stage. One of them, most notably, his signature suggestion, I suppose you would say, is universal basic income. He wants to give $1,000 to every American every month. Aside from the fact that it would be massively expensive to do this, maybe it would cut down on our need for a social safety net. But I dare say that if we voted it in, the social safety net would also stay intact. You can only add to social programs. Politically, it's suicide to try to take some of them away or to repackage them into universal income instead of Social Security, or to repackage it into universal income instead of free health care, or to repackage it instead of any other socialist trope you might apply to it. But Milton Friedman had his thoughts on universal basic income, and he actually had a suggestion to apply it that was actually more consistent with conservative thinking. I think you should always be conservative, especially with economics, because there is no other system that works except for capitalism. They may say that, oh, we have alternatives. You choose capitalism, but we choose, communism. We choose socialism. What they're actually saying is, we wish it worked. We wish we could be communist, and we wish it worked. And we wish it so hard that we're just going to believe it anyways. But it doesn't work. It's not like communism is out there as an option. It just doesn't work. So it's not an option, actually. And universal basic income is truly a step in that direction. Milton Friedman had a suggestion about how to avoid some of the uglier aspects of providing benefits directly to citizens. He had a way to incorporate it into our current system. And what that is called is negative income tax. If you make a certain amount every year, you actually get some money back. If you make under $50,000 a year, maybe you start off getting a 10% negative income tax. If you make $40,000 a year, maybe you get a 20% negative income tax. If you make $30,000 a year, maybe you get a 30% negative income tax, which is just a little bit more than 20% of 40. So you can still make your $100 extra or still have your job. Maybe you'll get a little bit less negative income tax eventually, but it'll still be more profitable. It won't prevent you from going out and getting a job like the current welfare system. The current welfare system says if you get a job, then that gets deducted from the welfare you receive. Well, what if you take a job and then 2 months later you lose it, but then it takes 9 months to get back on welfare? You're going to be in a very difficult situation. So most people will just stay on welfare to prevent themselves from losing that lifeline. If you did it in the form of a negative income tax, it doesn't matter if they have a job or not. They just don't make enough, so you give them more. And it's very efficient because it's incorporated right into the tax system. So even though I am opposed to it on the level that it's like not the government's job to give you a paycheck, we are entering a stage in worldwide abundance where maybe it's possible to provide some very basic support for citizens if it's done in an efficient way. Well, the current welfare system bureaucracy, with all of its people involved and all of its arbitrary requirements and its inefficient non-work requirements, for instance, not to mention Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, HUD, food stamps, everything else that goes into taking care of poor people or old people who can't provide for their medical needs. Most of that, maybe not medical, but most of that could be solved by putting them, according to their income, on a negative income tax bracket. It's efficient. It's not my ideal. My ideal is figure it out for yourself. But practically, from the perspective of a politician, it's a way to take care of the people who wish to be cared for and do it in an efficient way so at least has a potential to work. And we would love to put bureaucrats out of business. And most of all, we just want to have a better world. And mostly the theory is that if we go around tinkering with society and economics enough, it's going to break down. Mutations don't improve things. And that's what I feel like most social programs are. So just something to think about. I highly encourage you to review the work of Milton Friedman. He will put you on a solid path and give you a solid perspective for looking at economics in the world that you probably won't find, at least in my experience, from anyone except maybe Thomas Sowell. Look into both of them. Thank you for watching. Thank you for coming to Business Love with Ryan. It's our 5th episode. I'm very proud of what we're doing, and I hope all of you will show our channel to your friends, and just thanks for coming.